The Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA, a first trade pact the United Arab Emirates has inked with an African country, Kenya, will be negotiated between Kenya and the UAE, according to a joint announcement. Such an agreement, according to Dr. Tani Al-Zayudi, UAE Minister of State for Foreign Commerce, will strengthen the economic and investment relations between Africa and the Middle East and will increase non-oil trade between the UAE and Kenya, which increased to $2.3 billion last year. Joining us to discuss further from Nairobi, Khidher Adam. He's the founder and CEO of Snack Attack Africa. Khidher, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with inflation. I guess, what do you make of the latest rise, and do you see the trend continuing?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue in the short term, depending on our elections. As you all know, Kenya is going into elections next Tuesday. So the outcomes of that election and how stable we are will decide whether the inflation will continue or it will actually stabilize.
The Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee, they surprised markets by holding rates at 7.5%. Seeing as inflation is still rising, was that a wise move in your view?
I think right now they're trying to keep everything stable so that we have as limited variation before the election, which is next Tuesday, as I said. So I think it was a wise move to keep it stable for now. But I'm pretty sure that once the results are out, there will be some corrections made.
Okay. All right. So you happen to be a life coach. You're the CEO of a food business. How is the rising cost of goods and services impacting what you do day to day and the average Kenyan?
I think there's two parts. As a business owner, I'm in the food industry. I own a franchise, as you rightly said. I think we're struggling with keeping prices stable and low, especially the price of oil and flour in Kenya has doubled in the last 6 months, which puts a lot of pressure on industries like ours. As far as life coach is concerned, we're seeing more and more people getting into depression, having issues of anxiety. So there's a lot more people who are looking to have better life, better, a work-life balance. So we're seeing more business on the coaching side, which is a good and a bad thing, if you know what I mean. As far as the food business is concerned, I think it's a big tough time because we're trying to keep our costs down and affordable. But the industry, main ingredients have, like I said, doubled in the last 6 months.
Thanks for that. I want to move to this comprehensive economic partnership agreement between the UAE and Kenya. Is this good for both sides?
Oh yeah, UAE is one of the logistics hubs for East Africa, and Kenya being centrally positioned with its ports is a big partner for the UAE. A lot of goods come through the UAE from all over the world, and then they go down to Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Uganda. So I think this trade partnership is going to be good for both countries. We're 5 hours away by flight. We're about 11 days by sea from the UAE ports in Jebel Ali. So I think this trade deal is going to be fantastic for both countries.
All right. Now, from your perspective as a business owner, again, you're in the food segment. What does this mean for you? Is it access to more raw materials for your food? Are you afraid that those items from the UAE will flood the markets in Kenya? How do you think that will work out?
So like I said, UAE has already been putting a lot of volume through our ports in Mombasa. So depending on the details of the deal in terms of the tariffs and the duty structure, I see it as a good thing for Kenya. At the moment, Egypt, and I think now they getting some preferential treatment will sort of balance the scales, and I think we'll give more options to Kenyan business owners like myself.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's positive. Let's come back to the, I guess still on inflation, but talk about the rising cost of spare parts for vehicles. I guess, I don't know, not sure if you're you've got delivery vehicles or, logistics and so on, but how is that impacting you?
So I think for our food business, we depend a lot more on the motorcycles, which are known as the boda boda. So we've not been impacted seriously by the rising spare costs because there's a lot of options for the motorcycles. But I think where it's going to make a big impact is the transport industry for the Ubers and the Bolts, so the sort of aggregators that do a lot of people movement. I think the rising costs of transport has really impacted the service industry as a whole. But for the food sector, I think we've been fortunate that the motorcycle parts are still relatively affordable in Kenya.
Okay, so I guess we put all this together, inflation, trade deals. Does a lot of where Kenya goes in the future, is that hinge on the elections? Are you expecting a peaceful election next week?
Yeah, we hope. To answer the first part of the question, yes, Kenya has come a long way in its democracy. We've had political violence back, in the last decades, and I think we've learned from it, and we don't want to go back into that. So we and myself, we're expecting a smooth election generally. And yes, a lot is pegged on the way Kenya conducts itself in the next 2 weeks. But I'm positive. I think it's going to be a straightforward election. I think we're going to have a good government back, and business is going to increase in Kenya. So we're looking forward to the coming 6 months and above and beyond.
All right. Khidher Adam, CEO of Snack Attack, also a life coach in Nairobi. Thank you so much for your time in talking to us about a number of economic metrics coming out of the largest economy in Eastern Africa.